illusion of investment. The illusion of investment, a brutal dissection of foreign capital in Bangladesh. Introduction. The mirage of billions. For the past decade, Bangladesh has been consistently praised in headlines for attracting billions in foreign investment. Major players from the World Bank and the European Investment Bank to South Korea, China, and Japan regularly announce lofty sums aimed at developing Bangladesh. The numbers sound staggering. 2 billion here, 1.5 billion there, memorandums of understanding, MOUs signed with dramatic flair, government officials beaming, and newspaper columns flooding with optimism. But beneath this glittering surface lies a hollow core. Because when you strip away the diplomacy, the PR gloss, the institutional vocabulary, what you're left with is not investment, not in real sense. It's debt, diplomatic leverage, or political optics. Not wealth creation, not economic transformation, not sovereignty. What counts as real investment, you may ask? Before evaluation, before evaluating the situation, let's clarify a definition that global institutions and national governments have deliberately blurred. Real investments means the injection of risk capital into productive enterprises that generate long-term profits, employment and exports. If capital doesn't guarantee scalable private returns, doesn't produce local ownership or manufacturing capacity, doesn't build exportable capabilities or industrial base, it's not investment. It's either a loan, a gift, or soft power tool. The energy sector, a strategic trap. Bangladesh's energy sector has seen massive foreign interest, especially in Rupur project, which is nuclear, LNG supply, example Argent, LNG, US, grid modernization, Korean and Japanese aid. The Rupur nuclear power plant, for example, is a marquee project touted by the government as a $12 billion investment from Russia. The truth, it's a loan, not equity. It's being built by Russian contractors using Russian technology, will be maintained by Russian technicians. The plant will be fueled using imported Russian uranium. No value chain is localized. No export market exists. The returns uncertain, the cost certain, the dependency permanent. This is strategic tethering, not economic development. Education and healthcare investments or window dressing. When South Korea or the EIB talks about investment in Bangladesh's talent pool, it invokes images of universities, hospitals, and biotech labs. Reality paints a different picture. Maybe a few vocational centers, possibly a regional health training institute, or a handful of workshops and scholarships. But where are the large hospital chains with Korean technology? Where is the private sector medical infrastructure boom? Where is the return on capital? Answer: there isn't any, because these are donor driven programs designed for image management, not market engagement. You can't call a scholarship fund an FDI, yet that's exactly what gets reported. Textile and apparel, the crown jewel that's dimming. For years, Bangladesh's RMG ready made garments industry was the lifeline of foreign capital and job creation. That's changing. US tariffs under Trump and continued uncertainty under Biden have hammered this sector. Global competition from Vietnam, Bangladesh, and Ethiopia is rising. The supply chain realignment post COVID and during geopolitical shifts has left Bangladesh behind. Foreign investors smell volatility, and they are not betting on outdated meals with tariff exposed exports. So despite the noise, no real investment is flowing into the textile sector anymore. Just legacy operations and occasional upgrades. Logistics, ports, and infrastructure. Trojan horse projects. Logistics and infrastructure sound attractive. Ports, expressways, railways, but who controls them? Often built on foreign loans, which are either Japanese, Chinese, or Indian, constructed by foreign firms using foreign equipment paid in foreign currency, operated under limited or no Bangladeshi control. The results: projects are a severe geopolitical corridors. Projects that serve geopolitical corridors like China's BRI or India's connectivity routes, but do little to boost local entrepreneurship, export capacity, or economic complexity. The grand illusion: investment versus leverage. So, why dress up all this as aid, debt, or diplomacy as investment? Because investments create hope, while debt breeds skepticism. When a government claims billions in foreign investments, it inflates GDP expectations, hides fiscal pressure, buys time politically, and for the investors, they buy influence over national policy, create dependence on foreign tech, fuel, or expertise, insert themselves into a command nodes of energy, education, logistics, or banking. This is not capital inflow, this is disguised power grab. The dangerous consequences of believing in this lie. The illusion of foreign investment is not just a harmless PR stunt, it's its real structural consequences. Policy complacency. Governments delay reform, thinking capital is abundant. Debt overhang. Loans misrepresented as investments burden future generation. Industrial stagnation. Local entrepreneurs are crowded by foreign monopolies. Sovereignty erosion. Critical sectors are controlled by entities outside national jurisdiction. And worst of all, the public is pacified. People believe progress is happening when in reality dependency depends. What true investment should look like? Want real FDI, then demand transparent equity partnerships in manufacturing, tech, healthcare, and agriculture. Joint ventures when Bangladeshi firms retain controlling stake. Export oriented capital that creates foreign exchange and scales capacity. Capital that trains, employs, and empowers domestic labor, not bypasses it. Anything less is parasitic. Conclusion. Wake up before it's too late. Foreign investments in Bangladesh today is a mirage. Behind the carefully constructed narrative lies a darker truth, a nation being turned into a client state under the disguise of development. The headlines may speak of billions, but the streets remain unchanged. The industries remain undeveloped. The youth remain unemployed, and the country's future remains mortgaged to forces it doesn't fully understand or control. Until we both strip away the illusion, name the fraud, and demand real capital, we will remain trapped in a cycle of borrowed progress and imported promises that won't be good for Bangladesh or the entire infrastructure and economic sustainability of that nation. The illusion of investment, how Bangladesh is being sold a dream while mortgaging its future. Introduction. The false promise of foreign capital. In an age where economic narratives matter more than economic reality, Bangladesh is a textbook case of myth making. Over a decade, the world has been told that a country is on cusp of transformation thanks to an alleged flood of foreign investments, politicians trumpeting $1 billion deal, development banks issuing glowing forecasts, media outlet repeats press releases with the same uncritical cheerleading. But here's the brutal truth. This so-called investment is not investment at all. It is debt dependency, diplomacy disguised as economic development. It doesn't create real capital, sustainable industry, or competitive advantage. It deepens financial exposures while giving foreign powers more control over Bangladesh's future. This is not just a bad deal, it's a slow financial colonization wearing a modern mask. Historical context from aid dependency to investment illusions. Since its birth in 1971, Bangladesh has depended heavily on foreign aid and multilateral loans. Initially framed as humanitarian support for a war torn nation, this aid soon morphed into a complex web of IMF programs, World Bank structural adjustment, and NGO led innovations and interventions. The shift from aid to investment began around the 2000s, where global optics changed. Aid sounded like charity, investment sounded like partnership, governments wanted legitimacy, international lenders wanted better branding. So they began rebranding everything from concessional loans to soft grants as foreign direct investment (FDI), despite the fact that it created no local equity. It was often tied with conditionalities and it benefited foreign contractors more than Bangladeshi stakeholders. The power sector, dependency disguised as progress. Nowhere is the illusion more evident than in Bangladesh's energy sector. Case 1, Rupur power plant built by Russia, which is financed by a $11.38 billion loan from Russia, built entirely by Rostom, a Russian state-owned company, will be fueled by imported Russian uranium for its lifetime. The agreement locks Bangladesh into a fixed supplier-client relationship for decades. This is not a sovereign investment, it's an energy capture. Case 2. Renewable energy projects. Japanese and Korean agencies announce solar or wind infrastructure, but most are built operate transfer BOT projects with long repayment windows. The tech, workforce, and profits are foreign. Bangladesh assumes operational maintenance and debt burden over time. In real terms, Bangladesh is becoming an energy customer, not a producer. Soft sector PI, education, health, and the talent pool mirages. Buzzwords like talent development or soft sector innovation dominate investment languages. But what does this actually mean in practice? A few skill centers or vocational schools, not industry grade universities. Occasional donor funded scholarships, not a system wide transformation. Token digital literacy programs, rarely followed by real tech employment pipelines. Healthcare investments, again, vague promises. There is no evidence of multinational hospital chains, pharma giants, or high tech companies setting up in Dhaka or in Chittagong. It's all training seminars, telemedicine pilots. NGOs run outreach clinics. There's no profit, no scalability, no export capability. It's social work disguised as economic partnership. Textile and apparel, the declining crown. For decades, the ready-made garments industry drove Bangladesh's export engine, but the world has changed. Tariffs under Trump administration made Bangladesh less competitive. Wage advantages are being undercut by automation and global diversification. Vietnam, Cambodia, and even Ethiopia are siphoning orders. Bangladesh lacks the infrastructure, energy reliability, and high skilled labor pool to pivot to high value manufacturing. Yet, you'll still find headlines saying investment coming to textile. In truth, no one is building a new spinning mills without guaranteed orders. No one is entering without trade clarity from the US and EU. The base case scenario upgrades to existing factories funded through loans, grants, or from development banks, not private investments. This is sectoral stagnation, not growth. Logistics and infrastructure, the Trojan horse of controls. Railways, ports, bridges, surely these are great investments. On paper, yes. In reality, they are almost always built by foreign EPC contractors, energy procurement and constructions, funded by loans from foreign contractors' own government, operated under long term concessions that guarantee profit repatriation. Pardon, repatriation. Examples: Padma Bridge, founded by internal revenue only after the World Bank pulled out, a rare example of self financed success. Matarbari Deep Sea Port, Japan, managed by Japanese operators using Japanese equipment and integrated into Japan Indo Pacific trade strategy. This is not infrastructure development, this is geopolitical anchoring. Where is the private capital, you may ask? If you remove all state to state loans, multilateral grants, and development schemes, you're left with little actual FDI, no major tech firms setting up R&D hubs, no major manufacturing players beyond low-end textiles, no venture capitalist ecosystem, no industrial cluster of foreign OEMs. Why? Because regulatory frameworks are unsustainable, corruption risk remains high, logistics and customs are inefficient, profit repatriation and IP protections are weak. In other words, no real investor sees Bangladesh as a scalable market yet, except for extractive interest generating arrangements. The psychological damage of the investment illusion. The false investment narrative isn't just economically dangerous, it's psychologically corrosive. It breeds public complacency. If we believe the money is coming, why reform? Political deception. Leaders avoid hard questions, claim imaginary progress. Sovereignty erosion. Infrastructure, energy, even telecom fall into foreign hands. Over time, this illusion creates a dependent national psyche where Bangladesh becomes a manager of foreign interests rather than a creator of its own. What real investments should look like? If Bangladesh wants real FDI, it needs equity based joint ventures, not debt fueled infrastructure, policy consistency to attract long term capital, labor upskilling in automation, coding, logistics, and electronics, development of SEZs, special economic zones focused on exports and IP creation, not just land leasing. Bilateral trade agreements with clear investor protection mechanisms. Only when foreign capital is hosted on Bangladeshi terms, producing Bangladeshi jobs and driving Bangladeshi exports, can be called a true investment. Conclusion: reject the mirage, build reality. Bangladesh is not invested in, it is being merged, leveraged, managed, and indebted. The constant illusion of foreign capital is a distraction from the uncomfortable but urgent truth. The nation must create its own capital, attracts its own partners, build its own future, or remain a puppet in someone else's game. Until that happens, these billion dollar announcements are just shiny chains, polished, photogenic, but chains nonetheless.